Today we're taking a look at one of my favourite handhelds of all time, the Nintendo DS. Or more specifically, the Nintendo DS Lite in this case, which I think is the superior version of the original DS. Anyway, this particular model is pink, as you might be able to see, nice and fluorescent. And I actually got this one for free quite a while ago. Someone on, I think it was Twitter, was like, hey, I'm giving away my old DS. Does anyone want it? And I was like, yeah, sure. I hadn't had a DS in many, many years. I got the original silver Model 1 DS when it came out, and that was kind of a big upgrade for my handheld capabilities, as I was coming from a Game Boy Color. And I played that thing to absolute death, to the point where it definitely broke and died. So I haven't had a DS kind of in my collection for quite a while until I got hold of this one, actually a couple of years ago now. So I thought today we could take a look at the DS and also what kind of modding you can do in 2025. Is it still worth having a DS? What can you do with it in 2025? Let's take a look. So here is the Nintendo DS Lite in that nice pink. Like I say, got this one for free off, I think it was Twitter. So not really complaining about the color, although I do seem to now be collecting pink consoles, but hey, whatever. Nonetheless, when this was first released, this was really quite a big thing. It is, I think, in 2025, worth getting the Lite version if you're going to get a DS. The original DS was just bulkier, I think more fragile. This is definitely just more robust, and it really sits very nicely in the hand. I do really like this. And of course, when you think of a DS, you think of those two screens, which is kind of one of the reasons why I think getting the physical hardware is a really great option. Because yes, you can emulate DS games, and the hardware in here is nothing special. It's a 67 megahertz processor with a 33 megahertz coprocessor and a whole 4 megabytes of RAM. So you can emulate this, and you can emulate this really, really well. But no device really on the market is going to emulate the fact that you have two screens. You always have to end up with like having them side by side or some weird configuration, and it doesn't look how it was intended. Of course, as well, you have the pen and the touchscreen, which is again a thing that a lot of devices doesn't emulate. So yes, you can play DS games on your PC or one of the billion emulator devices out there, or even like the Steam Deck, but it's never really going to be true to what the game designers were considering hardware-wise when they built it. So this is one of the reasons why I really think this is a great console to just own and be able to play games on. And when I got this one, I must say it was in a pretty good condition. Having a sort of a look around, it's definitely used and kind of coloring a little bit, but generally you've got the stylus, you've got everything you would expect. You've got two shoulder buttons, your game cart port, charger, which is proprietary, which is a bit annoying, but nonetheless it's there. Around the front you've got your volume rocker, you've got the cover and place to put GBA cartridges. So yes, you can play Game Boy Advance cartridges on this as well, which is pretty cool. Headphone socket, and then the stylus and your power. So yeah, overall, really nice little kind of setup here. And when I did get the get this in the post, it came with this card here, the R4 Revolution for DS. And basically at the time I was like, oh yeah, cool, piracy, great, and just kind of threw it away. Didn't think about it, wasn't interested. And okay, yes, slight exaggeration, but it also, this card itself only supports up to 2 gigabyte micro SD cards. So I was kind of like, what's the point? You're not going to get a huge amount of games on here. Did actually have some games already on here, and it's just like, yeah, okay, that's fine. You can get your ROMs and play all your legally acquired games on a cart. So great. But when I was getting ready to make this video, I thought, well, hang on a minute. What else can you do with the DS? What else can you mod? What else can you make work on here? And that's when I started looking into the world of Homebrew for the DS and realized that yes, these flashcarts can in fact play your ROMs, but there is also a whole world of Homebrew applications, emulators, and other software available that will run on these. So I decided to go out and pick myself up a slightly more upgraded version. This one basically supports the SDHC standard of SD cards, which I think goes up to 32 gig. This is a 16 gig card. That just meant I would have way more space to be able to do things. And it says it's 2025. This is definitely just a cloned card I got on eBay from some random seller. I don't think this is necessarily like the original legitimate R4 cards, but whatever, it works. So yeah, I've got this for like nostalgia's sake, I guess, but it's kind of useless with that 2 gig limit. So what about the world of modding? What can you actually do? Well, I would actually say the hardware itself is pretty good. I don't really think there's actually much hardware modding that you would want to do. This has Wi-Fi. Granted, it's only the B standard, so it's slow and old, but it does have Wi-Fi. You've got backlit screens, you've got a good control scheme, you've got a decent battery life, but the battery is removable and replaceable, so get a bigger one if that's what you want. Sound is fine. I would actually say literally the only thing on here that I don't like from a hardware perspective is that proprietary charging port. So being able to swap that out for like a USB-C port, that would be pretty cool. But other than that, really happy with the hardware. It's the software and software modding that you really want to have a look at. And that's what we're going to look at today. So literally you have a micro SD card in here, which you load up with all your software, you pop it in and you turn the console on. It's already set up to automatically boot into whatever's in that card slot. So the first thing that you have like a billion options to choose from is actually your launcher and the menu that you actually want to be able to run games from. Let's just turn the volume off. So here we are using a launcher called Twilight menu, which basically brings the DSi menu to the original DS. So it kind of looks very similar. If you've ever used the DSi, you'll probably be very familiar with this kind of setup. And oh yes, we are going to look at Linux later as well. But immediately this kind of breathes a breath of fresh air into the console compared to, the original view, which is kind of just a little bit rubbish. Even in 2025, there is still actually a pretty active modding community. There's a really great website called gamebrew.org, which I've used to kind of gather up all these applications and everything else. And there is a lot available. One of the things that instantly, obviously, you're going to need as a hardcore nerd is a good, solid, Doom-themed file manager. And that is literally what this is here. So you can kind of go through and manage all your files and delete things and control things on that SD card. Very useful stuff, but albeit quite boring. What's probably more interesting is being able to play videos on your DS. Yes, okay, the resolution on these screens is pretty low, but there are a whole range of media player applications available Homebrew on the DS. For example, this one here, which allows you to play MP4 files, which means if you want to watch Twilight Zone in really low resolution, you can. I feel like that's probably going to get copyright protected, but yeah, it's playing and it's playing pretty well actually. Like obviously black and white old stuff anyway, their resolution isn't great to start with, so it kind of works. It kind of works. Yeah, I don't think there's any controls to like fast forward anything, which is a little annoying, so we can't but anyway, it works. You could play media on your handheld, and obviously you can also play MP3s, you can read documents, you can do all that kind of stuff. So you can actually do quite a lot, especially if you've got that 16 or 32 gig micro SD card. So there you go, Twilight on the DS. And of course, there's lots of other utility apps that you can kind of find. You name them, you can find them. There's apps that will let you dump your games. There's apps that will let you manage files, read media. There's FTP server here if you wanted to be able to connect to an FTP or use an FTP server on the device. There's all sorts of kind of utility applications available. Of course, one other thing that's also available is, yes, of course, Linux. You can, in fact, run Linux on the DS. Now, granted that 4 megabytes of memory is very, very limited, and it actually says on the screen as such. You'll also notice that the font is incredibly tiny. I think it's like, is it a 3 pixel by 6 pixel font, something like that. It's incredibly tiny and difficult to read. But there is one thing you can do about the memory issue, and that's where this thing comes in. This is a memory expansion for the DS. This adds, I believe, 32 megabytes of extra memory. And I actually remember having this at the time because this came with the official web browser application, which was its own game cart, and it actually needed this memory expansion to be able to have enough memory to render web pages, even back then in like 2008 or whenever it was. So if we add this into our bottom slot and it fits quite flush and neatly, like so, you now have extra memory loaded in, and that will actually help with some applications in Homebrew that does actually utilize that. One of them is that Linux install, which is a very bare bones Linux install. There's nothing really fancy about it. It's just compiled into a file that the Nintendo DS can run, and you can definitely find all the links for all these games and everything else down below. Some things that do work better, and you might actually want to use, is definitely some Homebrew games that do exist. There's an interesting range of games here, which varying degrees of kind of, shall we say, completeness. That is definitely one way to describe it. Now, first things first, there is a Doom port. It does work very well. I'm actually very impressed with this. I'd actually go as far as to say this is actually one of the better ways to play Doom on a handheld. The dual screens mean that you always have the map up, which is pretty cool, and it kind of just renders the map. It's playing at full speed. It's really actually quite nice. It renders really well. Obviously Doom runs on everything, right? But this actually is just a really good way to play it. You know, because of the fact that DS just has the D-pad, it's never really been very good for first-person shooters that require you to actually be able to look up and down. So not having to do that with something like Doom, which kind of traditionally didn't need that ability, this works really well. And yeah, this is actually a really great way to play Doom. Another one that's incredibly impressive is a Minecraft port for this DS called DSCraft. And I will say that, not the best control scheme, because again, you can't really move the camera around. But I will say, and in fact, I can't actually figure out how you jump either. Oh, that's interesting. Ooh, and then the game crashed entirely. Okay, we're having a success. Like I say, I mean, as with all Homebrew, it's Homebrew. But from a 3D game on a DS perspective in 4 megabytes of RAM, very impressed. I have to say that you could get anything close to a Minecraft experience. Okay, it's more like alpha Minecraft, but still pretty cool. And then maybe on the lower end of the spectrum of quality for Homebrew, there was this Halo DS, which I found that I had to give a try because I thought, you know, we have to see what it's like. And basically, you kind of just are scrolling. I don't really know how you're supposed to shoot. And yeah, okay, I just died. You kind of just pan around, I guess. And it's also weird that it's using the bottom key to the bottom screen as the main screen. I don't know what's going on here. It's a very strange game. But, you know, okay, it's a thing. Someone made it. Someone spent the time to do it. So that's kind of cool. Another thing that the DS actually does surprisingly well, especially considering its constraints, is emulation. Certainly going to be stuck with older emulation. Don't get me wrong here. We're not emulating a PS1 on here. Nothing 3D. But you can quite comfortably emulate things like the NES or the Mega Drive with no problem at all. And that's kind of impressive on such a tiny system, which has such a tiny amount of hardware available. So for example, we can pop into our NES emulator, play some Super Mario, and it works incredibly well. Like, genuinely, completely playable, completely kind of full speed. this is actually a great way to play Super Mario. Again, you've got that really quite nice, bright screen, which, as like I mentioned, someone coming from the Game Boy Color that didn't have a backlight, this was revolutionary. This was game-changing. But yeah, genuinely, playing NES games works really, really well. SNES, unfortunately, doesn't work as well. There's a lot of slowdowns going on there. But yeah, you know, old games, Atari systems, all kind of those 8-bit systems, you can emulate on here really, really well. And the control scheme tends to work very nicely with that. And yeah, you can have a good time there. So that opens up a whole range of games that you can actually play on here, which is kind of cool. And of course, the elephant in the room is that yes, you definitely can play your DS ROMs on here and load as many games as you want onto one cart. So there we have it. That's a quick look at some homebrew and modding abilities of the DS and DS Lite. Basically, get yourself a Flashcart and the world is your oyster. There is so much that you can do with this thing. And yeah, because of the oddity of the hardware, it really is still great to be able to play those games on the physical hardware themselves. It's a much nicer experience than emulating on like a normal screen or what have you. So 100% recommend taking a look at that. And yeah, still a very active community in 2025, still lots of stuff that you can do. So make sure to go check it out. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it. I know I have. I've enjoyed putting this thing together and will definitely be playing lots of DS games in the future. All the links will be down below for all the things that we used in this video. And I'll see you again very, very soon for another one. Bye for now.